Hey everybody, I'm going to try something I have not done on my channel, and that is taking another photographer's image and enhancing it because she was not satisfied the way the photograph came out, and it was very difficult to explain to her how she might approach fixing it unless I saw the image. So she ended up sending me the image, and let's take a look at it and see what I did. Are we ready for this? Let's do it. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new to the channel, this is dedicated to photography and as a photo artist and trying to think creatively out of the box. All right, let's take a look at an image I'm going to work on here, and I'll give you some background information. I was asked to do about a 2-hour presentation at a studio in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and to a group of photographers. Most of those were hobbyists. There were a handful that would do photography on a part-time basis. And when I got done with the presentation, it was like 2 hours long. I was demoing different concepts in Photoshop. And then I stayed for a Q&A session at the end, figuring I'll be there about a half hour or so. Well, an hour and a half later, I'm finally packing up because 80% of them stayed and was asking some really good questions. Anyhow, this gal came up to me and said, I'm having an issue with a image I took of a client, and I'm not sure how to approach it. And she was explaining it to me, and I explained to her how I might approach it, but without obviously seeing the image. I was just basically ballparking it for her as to what she should look for. So I just said, hey, do me a favor. Just send me the image, and what I'll do is I will record what I did for you. And so I will send you the recording back, and you could play it and walk through it step by step and work on that image. So here's the image. So let's take a look at it. And she sent me the JPEG. It would have been better if I had the RAW. I'd have more latitude of correction, but you know, it is what it is. Life is not perfect sometimes. So I'm going to duplicate the image. By the way, I'd like to thank Christina Sharp for the image here and to share with you guys what I was explaining to her. Now, there's many ways we can approach this and do this. And this is just my approach to it. So again, this isn't the only way, but this is the way I attacked it. So Control J or Command J on a Mac. So if we take a look at this, for the people that are fairly new, the shortcut keystroke Control J or Command J, the reason I'm going to duplicate that is I want to do a before and after of this to see how things look in that. So the next thing I'm going to do is I would like to select the subject. And so with this layer selected, if I go to properties, I can see right here it says select subject right there. There's a button there. Obviously, you can go to the toolbar to select it, but I'm just going to select it right there. It's going to give me the same results and let it do its thing. And there's my selection. Now, I typically do this a lot in my workflow. It's optional, but sometimes I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing. And to help me work a little bit quicker and easier, I might have to call up that maybe 2-3 times. Just depends, what I'm working on. And so I always do this. I'm going to go to Select drop-down menu, and I'm going to choose to save that selection. And I'm just going to give it a name. We'll just call it Subject, and then just click on OK. Now, what that does, it saves us in the Photoshop file. So if I close out and come back, I can recall this selection. So as an example, I'm going to do Control D, Command D on a Mac to deselect my selection. And during the process of working with this, if I have to make, that selection again on that subject, well, I could click on that button again, but I already did it once. So if I just go to Select drop-down menu, choose Load Selection right here, and then just go to the drop-down menu and choose Subject and click on OK, then I'm off and running. So anyhow, I got my selection. If you know the rules of a selection, basically it means it doesn't matter how you make a selection. Whatever you do next only applies to the selected area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Filter drop-down menu in Photoshop, and I'm going to choose camera raw. Now, again, I would have a little bit more latitude if this was actually a raw file, but she had sent me a JPEG. And when I look at the image, just pull this aside, the sides over here, around here, look pretty good, pretty well exposed. Obviously, the sky's blown out, and then she is underexposed. And I told her that, probably the best thing to do would have been to had a strobe or small strobe just to do a little fill flash to pop her and get more, a little bit more exposure. But not only that, some contrast and detail in her. She's a little bit washed out. So obviously she didn't do that. So we had to do what we can do here. So I'm going to go over here to light, and I might pull up that exposure a bit. Now I'm just focusing on her. Maybe add a little bit more contrast. I might pull the highlights down. Again, this is based on the image, so every image is going to be slightly different. And it's based on the look that you're trying to get. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I'm just going to leave that alone for right now. Maybe up that a little bit more. And I'm going to come down to detail. And I'm going to choose sharpen right here. I'm going to slide this up about right there. And I'm going to go over here to my mask. If I hold the Alt key down, Option on a Mac, if I hold that down and click and drag where it says masking, you can see that the areas that are white, it's going to apply sharpening to. Areas that are black, like her skin and stuff, it's not going to apply to it. So again, I'm just going to do a judgment call right here, and we'll reduce some noise if there's any noise in there. I'm not sure if there is, but not a bad thing to do. And I'm just going to accept that. So I'm going to click on OK at the very bottom here, the dialog box. And you can see that, let me deselect this now, Control D like in David, or Command D on a Mac to deselect the selection. And this is, again, just focus on her. There's the before, there's the after. Now she's still relatively sort of, flat and washed out a little bit. And it's hard to get some detail and contrast in this image. I'll do my best on this, but what I'm going to do here, I'm going to duplicate that again, Control J, Command J again on the Mac, and I'm going to come down to Filter, or drop-down menu here. I'm going to come down to Sharpen, and I'm going to choose Unsharp Mask. You could choose Smart Sharpen, just personal preference, whatever you're going to grab there, so I'll just do Unsharpen. And let me take a look at, scroll down here, just want to see part of her, yeah, right there. So I'm going to move the sharpening up, and I'm going to push this hard because of the fact that, and the radius up a little bit, because of the fact this is on YouTube and videos, and a lot of times subtle changes don't show up too well. So let's push that. Yeah, what the heck? I'm going to push all the way up and push this up a bit. So there is my before, after, before, after. And again, I'm overdoing it, but I just want to make sure this does show up on the YouTube channel, because again, they optimize these videos. Okay, I'm going to accept that with OK. Now what I'm going to do is, I don't want everything to be sharpened like that. I just want her clothes and maybe part of her hair, maybe pop the eyes out a little bit or something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a mask to the very top here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the Alt key down, come down here to click on mask. And when I do that, it creates a mask where it's actually hiding everything on that layer. So all that sharpening I was showing you is now hidden. And I'm going to grab my paintbrush, so B for brush, and I'm going to start at a low opacity. Let's make this a bit smaller. And it should be a soft edge brush. And I'm going to zoom in here. And I got to make sure I'm painting in white. So I'm looking at my chip colors here. They're black and white. So if I just tap on the X on my keyboard, it flip-flops the chip colors. And I'm just going to carefully, at about 30% opacity, swipe across here and there, just to add a little bit of sharpness there. So hopefully this shows up. Whoops. There's a before, and after. And again, I'm probably overdoing it, but I just want to make sure that this shows up in the video. Okay, so with that done, now I'm going to leave her skin alone and stuff. I'm just going to take the brush and pull that up about, I don't know, let's go about 80% or so, and just maybe brush in some of the hair to add some more details in there in certain spots. And I'm going over the clothes. I'm avoiding the skin on her chest and arms and her face. Don't want it to go there. So I'm just going to glide across there. And again, I'm doing this pretty fast. I would zoom in and take my time. It's just to help, explain the concept of what I'm doing here. Oops, with the image. Sorry about that. I think the batteries are getting low on my mouse. I'm sorry, it's sort of like stopping and jerking around a little bit. So we're just going to do this. So let me hide that. There's a before and after. Well, actually, this is the before and after. So you can see a little bit more pop, in the clothes. A little bit more detail. And again, maybe, what the heck? I'm going to Shift Control Alt E. That would be Shift Command Option E in a Mac. That's that visible stamp layer. And I'm going to try something here by just going back to Select drop-down menu. Let's load that selection again. So again, I'm just going to come down to Subject, and there's my selection. I'm going to go over to the Oreo cookie dipped in milk icon here in Layers, and let's pull up brightness and contrast. So I'm just going to keep this very basic and simple. And again, white reveals, black conceals. So I'm going to push the contrast up. So as I do that, this is on her, right? So if I do brightness, oops, I pushed that back a little bit. You can see that this is just affecting her. So I'm going to leave that about right there. That should be good enough. And I think that contrast is good enough right there. So again, I think you'd have a better latitude if this was actually a raw file. But again, I'm just pushing the limits of this JPEG here. Okay, so I'm going to now pull back on that. So let's take a look at it. And this is something that I had mentioned to her in the video, that this is totally optional because I don't know her vision of this, because I'm sort of approaching my vision. But the first thing was just to fix her, because if you take a look at this, this is what we started with. That's the before, and that's the after. But for me, I would push this further. And what I want to do, again, is I'm going to do Shift Control Alt E, like in Edward. That'd be Shift Command Option E. I'm doing another visible stamp layer here. And I suggested to her to consider going to the Edit drop-down menu, come down to a feature we've had for quite a few years called Sky Replacement. And when I click on that, a dialog box will open up. And in the, let this load up, default drop-down menu, you have 3 categories. You can actually, by the way, if you have a set of skies that you've purchased or maybe you've taken photos of, there's a little cogwheel here. You can actually go over here to say, well, let's import some other skies. So you could add more here if you want. But I'm just going to take what we get from default here, and I'm going to go to like sunsets, if I remember right. And what did I pick? I think I picked, I think I picked that one right there. So I'm going to select that one. And so that's my selection. Now, I made some tweaks. That stands out way too much. Fade edges, I'm going to take this and move this to the left because it's sort of a Bokean look back there, the blurriness. And I can see the way this is the natural part of the image. But if I move my, let's say the fade right here, all the way to the left for the edge, and I'm going to hit the shift. I think I'm going to leave that alone. But the brightness, I'm going to take this and push this all the way to the right. So that sort of washes out. And I think I'd like this better flipped. So I'm going to flip that. Okay, so I might cool that down. It's a little bit too warm for me. So in the temperature area, and again, this is based on your image, right? Don't try to replicate this with a different image because you're going to choose something different. But that looks pretty good. Okay, so at least there's something there because this is about her. It's not about the sky. And there's the before, and after. So let's see. I think I'm going to leave that alone and click on OK to accept that. And then I'm going to compact our sky replacement group. So here's the group. I can turn that on and off. But what I think I'm going to do is go to the opacity right here. And I'm going to pull that down. So I'm just scrubbing down because I don't think it needs to be that intense. So let's maybe about right there. Looks pretty good. Okay, now the rest would really be up to her to maybe if she wants to color grade this or, I don't know her style, whatever. But again, if we take a look at this, this is what I started with, and this is what I ended up with. Now, I also threw this in for her at the end, and I go, again, I don't know your style, but I'm just going to throw in what I might do. And that is, again, another visible stamp layer, Shift Control Alt E. That would be Shift Command Option E again on a Mac. And I'm going to do the old multiply blending mode. So this is, really pushing those colors out. And then I'm going to add a mask to that very top layer. Grab my paintbrush, so B for brush. I'm making sure I'm painting in black so I can see my chip colors here on the left. Well, I'm not. I'm painting in white. So X on the keyboard is the shortcut to flip-flop that. And I'm going to drop this down to about 30% opacity on the brush. So that's all I have to do is tap on the number 3, and that will give me my 30% opacity that you see right here at the very top of the option bar. Now I'm just going to go in and just work that image, sort of work in this area. And again, it's almost like a vignette, but you're controlling the vignette of the image, but it's really adding some extra, a little bit more punch to the colors and stuff. And after I get done with that, a lot of times I'll just take the feather slider here in properties on the mask and just click and drag that over to the right a little bit, just to soften the outer area. And again, with that selected, this is, again, just adding a little bit more punch to the image. Okay, and this is what we started with, and this is what I ended up with right there. So hopefully you learned something from this. Again, sometimes we just don't have the right equipment with us at the time. I said, maybe you should have had a reflector, but she was out by herself, and it's hard to deal with a reflector by yourself outdoors anyhow. You try to set that up, and the wind's going to blow it all over the place. And for me, I would have just had a little tripod with me to set up a light and just get just enough fill light to pop her out a little bit instead of having that flat look like that. So again, hopefully you learned something. If you can do me a favor, if you have any questions, my email address is right down here at the very bottom. Again, thank you so much for the people who are supporting the channel by going to buymeacoffee.com/Stephen Photo Artist. That link is down here. It'll be in my show notes. And by the way, thank you for everybody that has been purchasing the new tutorial I put up there that has to do with a template to assist people that were having challenges with ICM and it wasn't working for them very well on the camera and they had nothing to work with. So we're trying to simulate that and save a lot of time by using these templates. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's get that camera out. Let's practice. Until next time, see ya.